historic seaport here. I do want to thank the members of the Connecticut Port Authority that have come down here today. I want to thank the members of the Fairfield Harbor Commission that are out here today. And I certainly want to thank our state delegation, Senator Tony Wong, Representative Brenda Kupchak, Laura Devlin, and Kristen McCarthy-Vahey, and recognize also Anthony Calabrese from our Parks and Rec Department. I've got a few comments to kick things off, and I've got them written down so I'll make sure I don't forget anything as we go through all this. So to kick things off, just want to say good morning and welcome Chairman Bates and the members of the Connecticut Port Authority and guests to the beautiful Southport Harbor. We really wish you could have been here a few weekends ago. That's when we held our annual Southport Parade and our Blessing of the Fleet. The Blessing of the Fleet is an amazing ceremony that we go through literally. Each ship from our harbor sails underneath a fire hose stream of water from our fire department boat and is blessed by a different member of the clergy as they sail past Ye Yacht Yard and our town dock. We had over 1,000 people come down to participate in that this year. 200 years ago, this harbor was one of the main harbors on the eastern seaboard, and boats from Southport carried cargoes all over the world. Today's Southport Harbor is the recreational boating center for Western Long Island, and we're standing in the middle of a state and national historic district. Chairman Bates will remember 2 years ago when we took a tour along with board member Nancy DiNardo, Mr. Salvatore, Harbor Master Schiller, and Harbor Commissioner Chairman Jim Harmon, and we toured the harbor to take a look at what it meant to Fairfield, what it meant to Southport, and what it meant to our community in terms of how it contributes to our quality of life in Connecticut and to make our town such a desirable place to live. We talked then about the formation of the Port Authority and the fact that one of our concerns was that it would worry only about the larger harbors in the state. And they're certainly important, but we wanted to make sure the smaller harbors throughout our coast were not forgotten. And today is a testament to the fact that Chairman Bates and the Port Authority were true to their word in terms of they were going to develop programs for all harbors to make sure boating at every level becomes part of our quality of life and one of the amenities we have. And our harbor wouldn't be anywhere near what it is without the dedicated support of our volunteers on the Harbor Management Commission and the leadership of Chairman Harmon and past Chairman Mary Von Kanta. This is a great resource for planning. The Harbor Management Commission is a great resource for planning projects that need to protect and enhance our harbor. But I also want to thank all of our town departments, from Public Works to Parks and Rec, that have been involved through this, and including Joe Ramus from our fire department for helping set up today's event, and a special thanks to Jeff Enberg and the Pequot Yacht Club for not only helping set up today's event, but also being there and making sure in case of inclement weather, we were covered and we could use their facility just down the road to make sure this came off. We look forward to working with the Port Authority on future events. And before you leave today, I'd ask you to take a moment and think of this harbor and how it existed 200 years ago. And our goal here today is to make sure that 200 years from now, our residents are still enjoying this harbor. So again, I'm going to hand the mic to Chairman Bates and thank him for his dedication and commitment to Southport Harbor.
Thank you very much, First Selectman Tetreault. And let's have a round of applause for the newlywed. He just got married 2 weeks ago. So that is pretty great. Those of you that live in Fairfield know that every day is like this in Fairfield. It's this beautiful. Listen, we're glad to be here today because, as the First Selectman mentioned, 2 years ago when we were starting this Port Authority, one of the first local leaders that came to us was Mike Tetreault. And, he explained to us a couple things, that Fairfield is linked to the water, that Fairfield's quality of life and investment potential is linked to the waterfront. That's something to remember, that the water is an economic engine for communities up and down the shoreline of Connecticut. And that's what these investments are about here today. this really is a great partnership, and that's what we're trying to do with the Connecticut Port Authority, is partner with local communities to unlock economic potential. So in this instance, for example, we are doing cost sharing on 2 projects. One is updating a harbor management plan, and that's so local people can decide what are the best investments for them to make here on the shoreline. And the second is the town boatyard ramp and dredging reconstruction just down the way here. So that's going to make sure that people have access to the water, that they can be out on the water, and this remains a great place to live and invest in. And that's what this is about today. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the state legislative delegation here today. This is really a tremendous show of support for everything going on here in Fairfield, that you have the senator and 3 representatives here. And I have to say, we wouldn't be here today without them, because the Connecticut Port Authority is able to do these projects because of bond funds that are approved by the General Assembly of Connecticut. So that's the only reason. That and Mike Tetro's leadership are the reasons that we're here today. I do want to pay tribute to the board members of the Connecticut Port Authority. 2 of them are here today. Terry Gilbertson, who's from Woodbridge, and John Johnson, who's from New London, and another one, Bonnie Reamsnyder, from Old Lyme, and gosh, Don Frost from Fairfield itself. I think that points out something. This is a statewide enterprise, right? And we have a purview that we are making investments in New London, investments in New Haven, and today in Fairfield, and in actually 17 other communities up and down the shoreline of Connecticut and up the rivers. So everything we do is about advancing the maritime economy of this state. And thank you again for Selectman Tetro for your faith in us early, and for our ability to deliver together. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And as Chairman Bates said, this wouldn't be possible without the support of our state delegation, and I'd like to ask them to say a few words if you'd care to.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. What a beautiful setting. And it is important to understand that when the Port Authority initiated, it was a focus on the 3 major deep water ports that we have. But through the legislative input and good people within the legislative community, we expanded it to include coastal communities, and these grants resulted from that legislative initiative, because we understand that the deep water ports are critically important to the economics and business of the state. But we also have recognized through the legislative input that our communities and the quality of life that is so attractive in our community related to the water, this dredging helps expand that opportunity and enjoy that quality of life. So it's really important, and I want to thank the board, and I want to give a special thank to Fairfield's own Don Frost, who has spoken to me about this for the last 10 years and given me tremendous guidance. Bottom line, we have people who care about the ports. They care about our maritime history, and it is important for us as we look at jobs and businesses to use that as a vehicle to expand the capacity for the state. So thank you very much for your leadership, Scott. Representative Kupchak?
I would just like to give a special shout out to Mary, who's, when I was served on the Park and Rec Commission many years ago, how hard she's worked on this over the last 15 years with the Harbor Commission. So that's all I want to say, is that I really think you deserve a special round of applause for all your hard work.
Thank you, State Representative Laura Devlin. I think this is such a great project. I was happy to offer support. Certainly shows the investments in economic development projects such as this that are useful not only to sustain our community's heritage, but it has been pointed out for the benefit of all of our residents. So thank you to everybody for their hard work to bring this together.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Kristen McCarthy-Vahey, state rep here in Fairfield also, and I'd like to echo what Brenda said. You know, it's large systems that work together. Certainly as a legislature, passing the bond funding is a critical investment, the leadership of our first selectman, but it's the people on the ground day in and day out for years who are people like Mary and I and Don here in Fairfield, and those of you who came from other parts of the state who recognize how critical that day-to-day work is to get the job done. And it's those small steps taken together over time that help us to get here today. So thank you all for your work and support every day on the ground.
Hello, I'm Evan Matthews, the Executive Director of the Connecticut Port Authority. Thank you for having us today. It's really exciting to see some of these SHIP grants become reality, so thank you. As the Chairman and the First Selectman have said, this is a partnership between the state, the Port Authority, and the town of Fairfield. While much of the work of the Port Authority is focused on Connecticut's 3 deep water ports, improving small harbors and inland waterways is also an important part of that mission, as people have suggested. Before the establishment of the Port Authority as a standalone agency, many cities and towns complained that the grant and aid process was basically a lottery. They had no certainty, or they didn't know how these projects were awarded.
Thanks, Mike. And I'm Jim Harmon. I'm the chairman of the Fairfield Harbor Management Commission. And I'd like to echo your welcome to Mr. Bates, the members of the Port Authority, and everyone who's here today. As its name implies, the Harbor Management Commission is the town body that's responsible for managing and improving this beautiful harbor for the benefit of the public. Our guiding document, if you will, is the Harbor Management Plan, and this sets out the policies, goals, objectives, and recommendations for future projects. The current plan was adopted back in 1995, and as you might imagine, we've accomplished a lot of the original objectives. But 28 years later, we have a new set of challenges and goals. One of the SHIP grants we're here to thank the Port Authority for today will help to pay for a major update to that plan. It'll help us obtain permits and funding for future projects. And it'll also be helpful to have updated criteria when we review proposed private projects for consistency with the plan. The second grant will help us complete a project we've been working on for what Mary tells me is over 15 years, to make improvements at the town boatyard, which is just down the street from here. We have a deep permit for this project, and the town's Public Works Department replaced the launching ramp there a couple of years ago. But that area, including the dinghy docks nearby, has never been dredged. And if you have an opportunity to come back a little after 4 o'clock this afternoon, you'll see directly what the problem is. It's basically a mud flat at low tide. So the grant will pay to dredge that area to a depth of 3 to 6 feet, and then Public Works will regrade and extend the launching ramp so that residents, as well as the police and fire departments, can use the ramp and the docks even at low tide. So I'd again like to extend the thanks to the Harbor Commission, to the Port Authority for providing these grants, and we look forward to working with you on future projects.
Any questions? Yes, please, Kendra. Jim, do you?
We're working on the bid specs and construction documents for that. We have all the permits in place, and we have restrictions about when it can be done due to shellfish issues and so on, but it should be this fall, and if all goes well, it'll be finished by the end of this year. And the same with the Harbor Management Plan update by the end of this year.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all, and thank you all for coming out today.